Hey everyone, if you love scary stories, hit that subscribe button and join the creepy crew. Don't forget to like a video and tell me in the comments what time are you watching this now. My name is Rowan, and I work the closing shift at an old roadside tavern tucked away on a forgotten stretch of highway. The building is a relic from another time its neon sign sputters like a dying heartbeat, and the faded wallpaper tells stories of nights filled with laughter and secrets. The regulars, a motley crew of truckers, night owls and drifters, all know me by name. Most evenings, the only sound is the soft clink of glasses and the steady hum of an ancient jukebox playing the same classic tunes over and over. The routine is almost comforting in its predictability, yet I've come to learn that even in the most familiar places, the night can hold unexpected terrors. It all began on a night much like any other. I was behind the bar, meticulously wiping down the counter and rearranging a row of chipped glasses when the door creaked open. In walked a man who didn't quite belong a gentleman whose presence seemed to command attention. Dressed in a sharply tailored charcoal suit, his crisp white shirt and narrow black tie contrasted starkly with the worn-down decor of the tavern. His dark overcoat hung perfectly, and the way he moved suggested he had all the time in the world. He didn't order anything elaborate, just a top-shelf whiskey, neat, which he accepted with a polite nod. As I poured his drink, he leaned in ever so slightly and asked, in a tone that was both casual and oddly intimate, if I ever dreamed of escaping this humdrum life for something bigger. I offered a guarded smile and a simple, "I'm doing all right," but the question burrowed into my thoughts long after he had left. Before disappearing into the rain-soaked night, he pressed a small, crisp envelope into my hand, as if it were a token of both an invitation and a warning. For several days, I couldn't shake the memory of that encounter. Every quiet moment in the dim glow of the bar was haunted by the lingering enigma of that man's piercing gaze and his soft, persuasive words. Then, about a week later, he returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. At his side was a woman whose appearance was as disarming as it was unsettling. She was in her mid-30s, dressed in a trendy yet incongruous outfit for a place like ours to sleek, modern dress that somehow clashed with the tavern's antiquated ambiance. Her smile was wide and almost too rehearsed, and when she greeted me, her touch on my forearm lingered far longer than expected. "You have a lovely face," she cooed in a voice that managed to be both sweet and dangerously persuasive. The man remained silent during her introduction, his eyes flickering between her and me in a way that suggested they shared a secret language. As they sat at a corner table by the window, she began peppering me with questions. "How long have you been working here? How old are you? What do you think about a life beyond these four walls?" Between her compliments and her insistent inquiries, she offered a tantalizing proposition. An opportunity to join an exclusive event club that promised not only excitement, but also a handsome payota quick, 10 grand for a weekend's work. Her words, wrapped in charm yet dripping with an unspoken menace, sent a chill down my spine. I laughed nervously and brushed off her offer as a harmless flirtation, but something in the man's silent expression, and in the way she carefully measured every word, told me there was no simple business behind their visit. They left as abruptly as they had arrived, without another word leaving, behind only the echo of their footsteps and the envelope that still rested on the bar, its contents a mystery that I dared not examine. After that night, a shadow seemed to follow me everywhere I went. One evening, as I was closing up the tavern, I stepped outside for a moment of fresh air. The rain had subsided into a fine mist, and the only sound was the soft patter of water on the pavement. That's when I noticed a dark sedan parked across the street, its headlights dim and unmoving. At first, I assumed it was just another late-night traveler, but as I walked toward my car, the vehicle remained, almost as if it were waiting for me. Every time I glanced into my rearview mirror on my drive home, the sedan lurked at the edge of my vision, steady, silent, and unnervingly persistent. I took several winding side streets, desperate to lose it, yet it never wavered. Eventually, my pulse pounding in my ears, I pulled into the lot of a small police outpost. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, until the sedan's engine finally sputtered and it merged back into the darkness. I reported the incident, but the officers offered little comfort, merely shrugging off my account as the product of an overactive imagination fueled by late hours in isolation. Not long after that, I found myself moonlighting at a rundown gas station on the edge of town, a necessary job to make ends meet during the slow winter months. The station was as desolate as the place itself, lit only by a flickering neon sign and the harsh glare of a few faulty street lamps. One bitterly cold night, while I was refilling the pumps and watching my breath cloud in the freezing air, I saw him again, a figure in a dark red hoodie standing by a fuel pump. He wasn't there to fill up his tank. He simply stood there, his posture rigid and his eyes fixed on the building as if he were waiting for something. I kept a cautious distance, peering through the grimy window, my heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. After several minutes that stretched into an eternity, he began to shuffle slowly toward the station's front door, his steps uneven yet determined. Inside, I maintained my composure, though my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. When he reached the counter, his voice emerged in a barely audible whisper. "My car, it broke down. I just need a jump, maybe a flashlight to check under the hood." His tone was so rehearsed, it felt as if he were reciting lines from a script. I offered to call for a tow truck, but he dismissed my offer with a slight shake of his head and a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. Without warning, I remembered the emergency panic button installed behind the counter, a safeguard meant for moments just like this. My fingers trembled as I pressed it, and an ear-piercing alarm erupted, echoing off the cold concrete walls. The man's expression didn't shift into fear. Instead, it relaxed into a slow, unnerving grin, as if he'd expected nothing less than my reaction. In one swift motion, he bolted out the door, vanishing into the night. I sprinted to the security monitor, only to see empty, shuddering trees and a long stretch of black road where he'd been standing. The police later reviewed the footage, but all they could confirm was that a figure had disappeared into the darkness, except for a fleeting glimpse of a second, indistinct shadow near the pump that made no sense at all. The events began to blur together, each unsettling encounter layering onto the next like a suffocating fog. I couldn't tell if these were isolated incidents or pieces of a larger, more sinister puzzle. The envelope left by the enigmatic gentleman remained on the bar, untouched and unopened, a silent testament to mysteries I wasn't prepared to unravel. I began to wonder if I was somehow the focus of a carefully orchestrated plan, a target chosen for reasons beyond my understanding. A few nights later, I was scheduled for a closing shift at a sprawling 24-hour supermarket that sat on the outskirts of the same town. The store was cavernous and eerily quiet after midnight, its fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and casting long shadows down endless aisles. I was assigned to the electronics departmenta section that was normally deserted in the wee hours, making it an ideal place to lose oneself in the monotony of stocking shelves and arranging displays. But that night, as I methodically scanned the rows of blinking gadgets and humming machinery, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a stray customer-an odd figure wandering aimlessly between aisles, never pausing long enough to inspect an item. However, as the minutes ticked by, I began to notice him more clearly. Every time I glanced up from my work, he was there, a silent observer with his eyes fixed on me. His face was partially obscured by a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, yet the intensity of his gaze was unmistakable. His presence was unsettling, like a specter lingering at the periphery of my vision. Then, as if the oppressive silence itself had summoned him, a soft voice broke through the stillness. "There you are," it said, cheerful, almost too familiar. I turned to see a woman I had never seen before. Her features were delicate, but there was something cold and calculating in her smile. Before I could react, she stepped forward and grasped my arm with a firmness that sent shockwaves through my body. "You've been marked," she whispered urgently, her tone laced with a mix of desperation and authority. "He's been recording everything. You need to follow me." Her words, spoken in a hurried murmur, made my heart race and my mind reel. I tried to pull away, but her grip was unyielding, as if she wouldn't let go until I accepted the reality of what she was saying. With little time to process, she guided me through the labyrinthine aisles of the store. We weaved past rows of abandoned cash registers and flickering self-checkout machines, moving toward a side exit that few employees ever used. Every step we took was accompanied by the echo of our footsteps and the distant, almost imperceptible hum of machinery. All the while, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. I dared not look back, though the sense of impending doom grew with each passing moment. The woman's grip tightened as she murmured, "He's closer than you think. We must hurry." When we reached a dimly lit loading dock area, she abruptly halted and turned to face me. "I know you," she insisted, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We've met before long ago, in ways you can't even imagine. He wants something from you, something that only you can give." Her words tumbled out in a rush, leaving me reeling with confusion and fear. I strained to recall any memory of this mysterious woman, but my mind was a blank slate filled only with terror. In that moment, the overhead lights flickered violently and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I mustered the strength to break free from her grasp and bolted for the nearest exit, my heart pounding in my ears as I dashed back into the maze of aisles. Behind me, I heard her soft, desperate pleas echoing in the emptiness a mixture of warning and regret that only deepened the horror of the night. I ran until I reached a security office, where a sympathetic coworker hastily pressed the silent alarm and radioed for help. When the security team arrived and reviewed the footage, they were met with a chilling discovery. The cameras had captured the man's face clearly gaunt, a motionless visage that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who saw it. Yet, the woman's face was always obscured by shadows or hidden from view, as if she had been deliberately careful to remain anonymous. It was as though she had orchestrated the entire encounter with meticulous precision, leaving behind only a trail of unanswered questions. In the days and weeks that followed, my life became a series of sleepless nights and constant overreactions. I began to notice small details that I had once dismissed the sound of a car engine idling too long, a fleeting shadow at the edge of my vision, the persistent hum of static on a radio that seemed to whisper my name. Even my routine drives home from the tavern or the supermarket were punctuated by the unnerving sensation of being followed. At times, I'd catch a glimpse of a dark sedan parked at the far end of a lot, its headlights dim and unblinking, as if silently observing my every move. One particularly harrowing evening, after a long night at the supermarket, I was driving home along a deserted country road. The sky was a heavy, oppressive black, and the only light came from my taillights and the occasional flicker of distant lightning. As I navigated the winding road, I became aware of a persistent presence in my rearview mirror car that mirrored every turn, every hesitation. I accelerated, desperate to lose it, but the car only edged closer, its engine a low, menacing growl in the night. Panic surged through me as I took an unexpected detour onto a narrow, unlit lane lined with skeletal trees whose branches clawed at the sky. For what felt like an eternity, I drove with my eyes fixed on the mirror, until finally, with a jolt, the car's taillights vanished into the darkness. I pulled over at a lonely rest stop, trembling and gasping for air, and waited for dawn to break before daring to move again. Despite my efforts to convince myself that these encounters were nothing more than the product of a fatigued mind and overactive imagination, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Colleagues began to notice my jumpy demeanor. Whispers followed me down the hallways of the supermarket and the tavern. Even the local police seemed skeptical when I reported each incident, as if the very notion of being stalked by unseen forces defied their rational world. The envelope the token from that impeccably dressed stranger remained unopened on my bar counter, a silent reminder that something ominous was unfolding just beneath the surface of my ordinary life. Late one night, I found myself alone in my small apartment, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the occasional creak of the old building settling. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the envelope as if it might reveal its secrets if I looked hard enough. The weight of the past months pressed down on me, a relentless accumulation of dread and uncertainty. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the man's impassive face, the woman's calculating smile, and the cold, unblinking gaze of that mysterious figure in the supermarket. I began to wonder if these encounters were somehow connective. They were pieces of a larger, incomprehensible plan designed to ensnare me in a web of paranoia and fear. I tried to find solace in the mundane details of daily life, the clatter of dishes at the tavern, the routine of restocking shelves at the supermarket, even the quiet moments of solitude that used to comfort me. But now, each of these ordinary moments was tainted by the knowledge that I was being watched, that the night itself had turned hostile. Every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of a street lamp, became a potential harbinger of the next inexplicable event. One bitterly cold evening, while closing up the tavern, I noticed a figure standing at the far end of the parking lot, a man in a long, tattered coat, whose face was obscured by a heavy hood. His presence was as silent as it was menacing, and for a long moment I was frozen in place. I stepped outside, half expecting him to vanish into the night like a mirage. Instead, he began to move slowly toward the building, his footsteps measured and deliberate. With every step, the chill in the air seemed to intensify, as if the very night was conspiring against me. I hurried back inside, bolted the door, and double-checked the locks, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and disbelief. When I later reviewed the security footage, the man was gone, leaving behind only an empty lot and the eerie sound of the wind rustling through barren trees. As the nights blurred together, my sense of isolation deepened. I no longer trusted the comforting hum of the jukebox or the familiar clink of glasses behind the bar. Each new encounter, every unexplained whisper in the dark, chipped away at the foundation of the life I once knew. I began to question whether the forces behind these events were random, or if, somehow, I had been chosen as their target. The unanswered questions gnawed at me. Who were these people? What did they want? And why did their actions feel so meticulously orchestrated, as if every detail had been planned long in advance? There were nights when sleep eluded me completely. I would lie awake in my small, drafty room, listening to the distant sounds of a city that no longer felt safe. In the dead silence before dawn, I'd catch fragments of conversations in the window-low, indistinct murmur that seemed to repeat my name, or the faint sound of footsteps pacing just outside my window. Each time, I'd force myself to rise, check every lock, and peer out into the darkness, only to find nothing but the empty stretch of street and the promise of another long, fearful night. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I decided to confront the mystery head-on. I resolved to revisit the places where the incidents had occurred, to search for any clue that might explain the relentless pursuit I felt. I returned to the tavern early in the morning, long before the sun could dispel the lingering shadows. I examined every inch of the premises, the back door, the storage room, even the creaky old attic above the office, hoping to find some trace of the man's or the woman's presence. Yet nothing was out of place. The envelope still lay exactly where I had left it, its seal unbroken, its contents still a mystery. It was as if the past few months had been a carefully constructed illusion, a series of inexplicable events with no tangible evidence to prove their connection. My investigation didn't end there. I began to scour old security footage from the gas station and the supermarket, looking for any sign of an anomaly, a flash of movement, a shadow that lingered too long. Each time, the recordings offered only fleeting glimpses of figures moving in and out of frame, their faces blurred or shrouded in darkness. It was maddening and infuriating in equal measure. The more I searched, the more I felt trapped in a labyrinth with no exit, with every answer leading to a dozen more questions. Now, as I sit in the dim light of my apartment, I am left with nothing but my memories and a gnawing sense of dread. The once comforting routine of my life has been shattered, replaced by the constant fear that something unseen lurks just beyond the next corner, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I have learned to live with the knowledge that every shadow might hide a threat. Every passing car could be a silent observer. I have stopped working alone, insisting on a partner or two during late shifts, yet the feeling of being hunted lingers persistent, unyielding, and ever-present. I don't know if I will ever uncover the truth behind these encounters. Perhaps it was all a series of unfortunate coincidences, the product of a mind stretched thin by the isolation of the night. But deep down, I sense that there is something deliberate behind it, a la hidden hand guiding these events, a plan so vast and intricate that I am merely a pawn in a game I never agreed to play. And so, every night, as the neon glow of the tavern fades into darkness and I lock the door behind me, I brace myself for the next chapter in this unfolding nightmare. In the quiet moments before sleep takes over, I replay every detail of the past months: the man in the tailored suit, the enigmatic woman with the persuasive smile, the relentless black sedan, the hooded figure by the gas pump, the whispered warnings in the supermarket aisles. Each memory is a puzzle piece, and I am left to wonder how they all fit together in a picture that remains just out of reach. I have begun to suspect that the true horror lies not in any single event, but in the slow realization that the world around me is not as mundane and safe as it once seemed. The night has become a canvas for a series of terrifying possibilities, and I am left to confront the haunting question: who or what is really orchestrating these encounters? As dawn finally breaks, washing the world in a pale, uncertain light, I am reminded that I have no choice but to continue. The nightmares may recede with the morning sun, but they never truly vanish. They linger in the recesses of my mind, waiting for the darkness to return. And so I carry on, each day marked by the silent dread of another night filled with unanswered questions and the ever-present possibility that the next encounter might be the one that changes everything. I don't know how much longer I can live with this weight on my shoulders. Every shift, every solitary moment is a reminder that I am being watched, that I am a target in a game whose rules I can neither discern nor escape. The envelope remains unopened. The mysterious figures continue to haunt my peripheral vision, and the city's night air carries whispers of a secret that I am doomed to uncover. With each passing night, I find myself sinking deeper into a realm of fear and uncertainty, a realm where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blur, until I can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. This is my reality now, a never-ending vigil against the unseen. A life defined by the haunting echoes of footsteps in the dark and the promise of something far more sinister lurking just beyond the light. And until I can unravel the mystery behind these encounters, I fear that the shadows will never truly let me go.